Everybody. Everybody likes to listen to music. That's just a fact. If you can hear, you're usually listening to music. And one of probably the most prominent genres of music is jazz. It's probably one of the genres where music has been like finely tuned, where the musicians know what they're doing and they're very smart about how they play and how they put things together. So I'm going to be talking to you today about the history of jazz from about the late 1800s to the 1950s. I'm going to walk you through, first off, through New Orleans, blues, starting it off, and then I'm going to move to swing in the 1930s, then 1940s, bebop, and then ending it off with Latin jazz in the 1950s. Okay, so 1900s, New Orleans blues. Started off with African Americans getting together. They were grabbing any instruments they could, singing about like the hardships they were having throughout their lives. They would base most of it off of like hymns that they have heard, but they would also put like African twists on it, throw in African like drum grooves, just singing about like their heartbreaks or what they've been going through. New Orleans is called the melting pot of music. It's called this because they had their second line bands, they had military marching bands. So you're getting all these different flavors. They had people coming from everywhere to just go here. It's because it's a place to celebrate. So they were going here to play music, to feel good, but also, try and get their mind off things by singing the blues. Louis Armstrong was probably the most prominent person in jazz history ever. He developed improv, not necessarily improvisation, but giving people certain solos, letting people like stand out from the rest of the group, which, if you know anything about jazz, it is probably the most important part, is letting someone solo, make everything up. Wynton Marsalis, who is a huge trumpet player, he's played everywhere from New Orleans to contemporary jazz. He plays everything. He says, Louis Armstrong, through his clear, warm sound, unbelievable sense of swing, perfect grasp of harmony, and supremely intelligent and melodic improvisations, he taught us all to play jazz. So, Louis Armstrong started everything off. And then we're going to move to 1930s swing music. This all happened during the Great Depression, where everything was on a decline. A lot of people were losing stuff that they loved, and they all wanted to get together and get their minds off of it. So swing music was like happy, kind of moving music that people like to listen to, they like to play. And if you had an instrument, you could play for free. You didn't need any money to go play music. The swing rhythm was developed by just a laid-back version of straight, like eighth notes almost. So if you're playing something just the swing groove, they would lay it back and they'd get grooving with it. And so people liked that because it was something different, and it'd make them feel good. Count Basie really set this into motion. He was a piano player. He was also a very great band leader. He put many bands together, recorded many albums, and just really got the swing in motion. They would probably play with about 15 people in their big bands. They'd have trumpets, trombones, percussion players, a bass player, and so piano player, of course. I have a clip of Count Basie playing Miss Thing. But it is not working. Okay. I have a song with my phone that I probably should. Here's Count Basie playing stereophonic. As you can tell by the swing rhythm, it's not straight at all. It's just about, you can see how many horn players there are too, just all playing together. It's upbeat, it's happy music, They're all playing together. And then when people started getting into this jazz music with the swing, they started to want to play faster. They wanted to play more like intellectual stuff. That's why bebop is called jazz for the intellectuals. It was fast tempos, intricate melodies, and it was just, they were putting different modes and different styles into the music that had never been in there before. Thelonious Monk, who was a great bebop player in the 1940s, says if you really understand the meaning of bebop, you understand the meaning of freedom. So these people really felt like this music was, a way just to be free from everything else. Charlie Parker, who is probably the most cliche bebop person in history, he played everything fast. You never hear a song from Charlie Parker. Everything's always intricate, everything has great melodies, and it's always extremely fast. And I was gonna play Donna Lee by Charlie Parker, but I have it. As you can tell, it's much faster. Very intricate melodies, intricate rhythms. Alright. And we'll move into where I'm going to end it off in the 1950s with Latin jazz. As you can see, there's a picture of steel drums, which is the most recent instrument ever made, acoustic instrument ever made. There's 3 different styles of Latin jazz. There's Afro-Cuban, Afro-Brazilian, and Afro-Caribbean. And there's different subcategories of each of those. It was adopted from Spanish and African roots. So people would be meeting in Latin America, in the South, everybody just mash everything together. You'd get different styles of music. The most prominent was probably Afro-Cuban, because it was like sambas, samba reggaes, mambos, stuff like that, which is, you hear all the time today. Many of the artists that played in bebop had that sense of music, and they wanted to venture out. So many of them went into Latin jazz, including Dizzy Gillespie, who is a very prominent bebop player. He was the guy you saw earlier with the trumpet that was all messed up with huge cheeks. He also went into playing Afro-Cuban music, which he's gonna play. So here's Dizzy Gillespie. Playing Night in Tunisia. Very bass heavy music. This is Afro-Cuban style. Alright, well, that was the history of jazz from the late 1800s to the 1950s. Jazz music has been the root of all music since then, and so if you're listening to anything, the roots of it are from jazz. Thank you.
All right, Hannah, what did you think?
I thought he did a really good job at the beginning, telling us what his topic was. He had a good overview of all the main points. He had really good examples for each of his supporting topics. He had a good definition for bebop, and the pictures he had were good. I also like that he didn't really use too much note cards or papers or anything in the first delivery, but for the negatives, he kind of was like reading off the PowerPoint kind of, instead of like having pictures and visuals. And there weren't that many definitions of the things. And like the pictures he used, like he could have used the specific pictures for the examples on that slide instead of like mixing them up. And I thought he did a good job like improvising with music too. That was smooth. And and the end was a little kind of rushed.
Well, I think the end got a little rushed because he'd run out of time. And so, I mean, that's one of those things that, and that's a combination of things, having the problem with the visuals and also, you know, working it out. When you're speaking from an outline instead of a script, your pacing is one of those things that it takes a lot of practice and a lot of ability to do, and it's not quite as easy as it might seem at first. I thought you had a pretty clear statement at the beginning to get our attention, and you clearly lay out the goal for us. There's an excellent setup of what the content is supposed to be, so I thought there was a good preview. I do think some of the terms need a little bit clearer definition. I think, especially when it comes to the technical kinds of things, maybe other people all understand these sorts of things by second nature, and I'm sure it seems childish for you to have to explain some of them. But when you're talking about laying back and the rhythms and eighth counts, and I'm going, you got me. You know, I couldn't keep rhythm to save my life. You know, what's the old saying? I couldn't carry a melody if you gave me a bucket. It's just one of those things that's problematic. So a little bit more explanation there, or cut that kind of stuff out entirely. Maybe give us an auditory comparison, Gesundheit, that you're doing on those things. I thought that you did a great job when your video clips wouldn't launch of just, you know what, I got to back up here, and you went right into it, and it wasn't a problem. The music was easy to compare to what you were talking about, and I thought that worked pretty well. So we didn't get the video clips that went along with it, but we got the idea, and that's what's essential, and I thought that you did a good job covering on that. I do think that you need to cite the sources a little more consistently. I had information about New Orleans and about the origination of jazz from hymns and African music being put together, or African instruments, I should say. And then there's some reason that there's something about New Orleans that is so important and unique, but it wasn't explained to me very clearly, and it sounds like it's just one of those things that everybody in the field seems to accept as true without having an explanation or giving some proof on it, and I think I need a little bit more proof on those points. The visuals, for the most part, are just structural stuff. They're just leading us through the information, give us a visual transition to what the next point is. So that's one of the reasons that it helps keep everything really organized. It's not nearly as interesting to look at. To me, the auditory clips that you used were the most interesting and useful parts of the speech. I thought that they helped a bit. And of course, the videos probably would have had the same, they'd have had the sound in it too. So that's just, like I said, I thought you handled that pretty well. And I do know what she's talking about. Sometimes you have a tendency to rely on the PowerPoint. In other words, you don't have notes in your hands, but there it is on the screen, and you start talking to the screen while you're giving the speech. Not all of the time, but enough of the time that it was noticeable. All right, thank you.